Survivor 50. Who wins it? Who's got no shot? Today I'm going to be ranking all 24 players on Survivor 50 by how likely they are to win the game. Starting with the earliest representation from Survivor, we have Jenna Lewis. While I do think it would be an incredible story if Jenna is able to come back and somehow win the 50th season of Survivor, of course, originally appearing in the very first season of the show, I think that would be an incredible story. I don't necessarily know how super likely that is. Historically, these early Survivor players haven't done exceptionally well. Kelly Wigglesworth comes back for Cambodia, gets voted off in the early merge. Of course, on that same season, Kimmy Kappenberg actually does decently well, like where she found herself in the alliance that ended up going towards the end of the game, but not close enough to that alliance to where she actually could get to the end. Then, of course, you have Jeff Varner. I wouldn't say he played a great game, but he played hard. And then, of course, leaves Game Changers, completely ruining his reputation. Apparently, Jenna keeps up with the show, so I'm interested to see what that looks like all these years later. This is an older cast. I do think there are some people that she could get along with. Maybe there's a world where she gets along with some of the older men, the Joes. You know, I definitely could see her getting along with Colby. I just don't know if she's going to have the ability to maneuver herself to the end and then plead her case to the jury. I'm going to put her in C tier right off the bat. Gut instinct, Colby has no shot, right? Like, we've seen Colby come back for 2 returning seasons, All-Stars and Heroes Villains, and neither time went as well as his original season, the Australian Outback, where by the time Heroes versus Villains plays out, he is kind of a joke in a way, where Jeff is just constantly mocking him for being awful at the challenges, where there's just kind of this feeling that Colby is a shell of what he once was. Now, would that be a cool story, as if he comes back on 50, redeems himself, and somehow wins it? Apparently, he has kept up with the show, where I don't think he was keeping up with the show back on Heroes versus Villains. So I think there's a world where he at least knows what's going on. I just don't know if on any of his seasons he showed the potential that he would have to have in order to win a season of this caliber, a season of this many players that are going to be playing so hard. And so I think with Jenna, I think he has to go C tier. You could see him winning if he does manage to get to the end, but I just don't know if he's going to be able to get to the end. Stephenie LaGrossa, I don't know if it's her Traitors and Snake in the Grass performance that's getting in my head, but in my head, Stephenie is probably like one of the least likely people to win Survivor 50 out of the entire cast. You know, she's an older school player. The same sort of things are holding me back from thinking she could potentially get to the end. I don't know. I think she gets outmaneuvered at some point. Even if she does manage to find herself in a good alliance early on, I think she ends up getting cut at the merge. I could also see her just being an early boot. So I'm putting her in D tier. I'm sorry to the Stephenie LaGrossa fans. Cirie Fields, the only player from, you know, these early seasons that has the ability to maneuver herself to the end. Cirie, obviously, she's played, what, 4 times now? She's played Big Brother. She won the Traitors. We're talking about like one of the reality TV goats. I love Cirie. You love Cirie. Everybody on the island loves Cirie. The only problem is that everybody knows that everybody loves Cirie. And so the most likely way for this to play out for her, pencil her in for the merge right now. She's going to make it that far. In all of her seasons of reality TV, she's never been voted off early. But come mid-merge, are these players really going to sit at the end with Cirie Fields? She's the most loved Survivor contestant of all time, right? And everybody out there knows that. She's going to have to pull some sort of rabbit out of the hat in order to convince these players to take her to the end. She needs to convince them that somehow she can't win the game. She needs to hype up one of the men's egos. I don't know what the path is. If anybody's going to pull off a rabbit like that, it could be Cirie. I'm putting her in A tier. I think she's decently likely to win the game, but not my first pick. Just because I think everybody out there should be scared of Cirie Fields. Ozzy, I mean, Ozzy's got to be in the same vein as Colby. Just this challenge dude. Loved player from his first season, but on returning seasons hasn't really shown too much social strategic ability. I think that the Aussies of the world are actually in danger of being early boots on this season, depending on what tribe they get on. While Ozzy is a fan favorite, I don't know if Ozzy is a super fan favorite. I think pretty much the whole cast are super fans. They all really love the game. I could see them just wanting to vote Ozzy off early, or I could see a world where maybe Ozzy is like a 0 vote finalist, where somebody is able able to get Ozzy, kind of put them under their wing, carry him strategically, and then are able to convince Ozzy that he could beat them at the end, but then Ozzy just ends up losing and doesn't get any votes at the end or something like that. Almost like a Troyzan from Game Changers. I could see Ozzy being in the position of. But either way, I don't think he wins the season. I don't think he does. Honestly, I'm putting him in D tier. I feel like he's had enough opportunities to prove himself at this point, unless he's like really, really thought about like what went wrong in the games that he lost. I don't think he has a strong shot here. Coach is one of the most interesting players on the list, because when you think Coach, you think this Dragon Slayer doofus that's just out there just doing whatever. But Coach played one of the strongest losing games in Survivor history in South Pacific, where he basically runs the entire season. He just wasn't able to plead his case at the end. He was preaching that loyalty and honor BS at the end that ended up leading to his loss. Unlike, Ozzy, unlike Colby, Coach proved that he can look at the failures of his game and improve on that. He's not going to be able to play a South Pacific game here. Obviously not. There's not going to be an alliance that just steamrolls to the end on this season. I think he has a shot at this. I really do think Coach has the shot at being the winner of Survivor 50. I think he would have to just abandon that loyalty BS. He has to go out there, play a cutthroat game, and then at the end he has to be like, yeah, I lied to you. I knew that you thought I was just some doofus that was going to be preaching loyalty, and then I ended up playing this cutthroat game and I got to the... I don't know. Maybe I'm giving him too much credit. I think his South Pacific game, to me, proved that he knows how to fix the issues, So I'm going to put him in B tier with all of that said. Aubry obviously played a strong game in Ko Wrong. She comes back for 2 more seasons in Game Changers and Edge of Extinction. Neither one of them goes particularly well. I think her coming back for those seasons actually helps her a lot on this season. I think it could lower her threat level a lot, where I don't know if people are going to be looking at Aubry as this GOAT strategist, especially in comparison to some of the other players that are on the season, where there's just so many players that I think are giant strategic threats, to where I think Aubry actually could sneak under the radar a little bit. It'd be really funny if she's on a tribe with Q and she gets voted off early because Q, if you remember on 46, Q just had like a vendetta versus Mariah because she reminded him of Aubry. Like, it's so random. It's like, why Aubry? But I actually do think Aubry could do pretty well. I'm going to put her in B tier here. Chrissy from Survivor 35. I think people are going to want to work with Chrissy early on. The question is whether she can get to the end, whether people feel like they can beat her. And I think there actually is a chance that she has a little bit of wiggle room in there where people might have this feeling that they can beat her, considering that, she lost in the final 3 on her season. And maybe that is how she finds the window to where she wins. I'm kind of talking myself into an A tier here. I could very much see her being the winner of Survivor 50. Christian Hubicki. What went wrong on David versus Goliath is that I think that he failed to manage his threat level. I think he went in there with the mindset of, I'm just going to be the nerd. If I can just make friends with enough people, I can get myself to the end. But then what he didn't realize was that everybody saw him as this giant threat because he was just so overwhelmingly likable. But this is a season of very, very likable players. Does that give him enough room to get to the end? I think probably still not. I think even amongst a cast like this, I think he gets taken out somewhere in the mid-merge. Just because why would you want to go to the end with him? He's a little bit like Cirie in that sense, but I honestly have more faith in Cirie to be able to pull off a miracle and somehow get to the end and win than I do Christian. So I'm going to put him in B tier as far as winners go. Angelina. Can Angelina win 50? Is that a possibility? What is a Survivor 50? This grand staple season, this huge returnee season, the 50th season of a television show. What does it look like if Angelina wins it? I don't know. It's hard to picture it. Angelina on her season would do these wacky offbeat things. A little bit like a coach, a little bit like a Q, a person that's a little bit of a fun spectacle. But I think out of these sort of players, I actually think Angelina is the most likely to win out of Coach and Q and herself. I think she just has the self-awareness that the others might lack a little bit as far as being able to get a jury vote. I know she didn't get the jury vote on her season, but I think her actual game of getting there was missing a little something. Honestly, I could see the world where Angelina is a key piece of this game, where she is in a majority alliance, where she is willing to make the difficult moves against the players that she can't beat at the end, and then she finds herself at the end in a winning spot. I'm putting her A tier. Mike White, obviously the creator of the White Lotus. I think that, like, you know, while that has nothing to do with Survivor, I think that that reputation is actually going to loom very large over him, to where I don't know if this cast is willing to give Mike White $1 million. I wonder if the prize is going to be $1 million now that I say it out loud. Is there a chance they do a winner's award, make it 2 mil? I think Mike White's gonna struggle in the game. I think he played such a great game on his first season that he's a threat in that department. He's not someone you want to give $1 million to, but he's also somebody that if you're in the mid-merge and you're looking at Mike White and he's been playing a good game, I think you just take the shot at him, and I think you eliminate him. I'm gonna put Mike White in C tier. If he wins the whole season, then I'm a fool. I just don't see it personally happening. Rick Devens, this cast just has so many universally loved characters. Rick Devens being another one. I know that people, like, you know, gave Rick Devens a little bit of shit on his season for, you know, playing that game that was a little bit stale at that point of Survivor, where he's just going out, finding the idol, playing the idol to get through one more vote, then immediately goes out and finds another idol. That whole cycling of the idols was a little stale by that point. But I think Rick Devens as a player could have actual potential for winning a returnee season. I think that even though he was on the bottom for a lot of that season, I think he at least had the awareness of his position in the game. I just don't see it as like the most likely win out of the bunch. I'm going to put him in B tier. Jonathan Young is my personal biggest, like, what are we doing here? Casting choices out of the entire cast. I would have rather had anyone else from the Taku 4. I would much rather have Omer. I'd rather have Lindsay. I'd rather have Marianne. I just feel like Jonathan being the only representation from seasons 41 through 44 is ridiculous. When I think of those seasons, I think of at least 25 players before I think of Jonathan Young. It's like, what are we doing here? Not a big Jonathan fan. He's probably safe early on just because I think he's probably the best team challenge performer maybe ever in Survivor. Almost surely the best on this cast. As far as the team challenges go, when it comes to individual, I think it's an entirely different story. A lot of these new era challenges are very physical, very, you know, strength dependent. He's good early on, but is Jonathan going to win this game? No, he's not. He's going D tier. He's maybe the least likely person to win the game. Is anybody voting for him at the end? Is he capable of playing a strong enough game to get himself to the end in a position to where he wins a jury vote? I think the answer is just no. I think the answer is just a flat out no. I'm looking up at this. I'm moving Rick Devens down. I don't think he's super likely to win the game, and I don't think he belongs with these people up here. Emily Flippin. Emily in her season showed the ability to grow and adapt based off the things that are going wrong in her game, where very early on she's extremely like pushy and aggressive, pushing a little bit too hard for the things she wants in the game, where then, you know, Caleb and her have that conversation where she kind of realizes like, all right, I need to chill. She ends up playing a different game, but the problem is that game wasn't the greatest game for her either, where she ends up just kind of tagging along to the Reba boys, Drew and Austin, as kind of like a third wheel, even though they were more loyal to Dee and Julie. I guess they did want Julie out before Emily, but even if she gets down to the final 3 of Drew and Austin, she has no chance of winning that game. I think she's like C tier. I don't think Emily's gonna win this season. I'm sorry to you Emily lovers, but just don't see it. D, also from Survivor 45. I saw a lot of people complaining about the D casting choice, and for me, I would rather have D on here than any other winner of the new era. I'm so interested to see how D plays on a returnee season. On her original season, obviously she was always on the top. She always knew what was going on at every single vote. Nobody came after her until like the final 5. She played the best game of new era Survivor. At no point did she have to face any like extreme amount of adversity, which is all the credit to her. Like, if you can go through a season and have very little hiccups through the entire season, that's just credit to your social ability and credit to your strategy that you're doing the right things. But on Survivor 50 though, she's going to be faced with immediate adversity, where this entire cast knows that Dee played the best game on an all newbie season since Kim, right? Since Kim. The point is, like, her game is very, very obviously great, and everybody knows that it's great. And so she's probably going to have to immediately play from the bottom. And the question is whether that means she's a very early boot, or is Dee capable enough of a player to get herself out of that sticky situation and somehow find herself herself into a majority alliance? That's really the question. Is she all that likely to win? Probably not, just because I think that if D is towards the end of the game and she's been playing a great game again, I think they'll make the move on her. And on these returnee seasons with like 1 or 2 winners, there's always the question of whether they're going to reward somebody that's already won $1 million as opposed to giving that money to somebody that hasn't. I think if she can get to the end with people that she's obviously played a better game than, then she has a chance. I don't know. I think she's probably like C tier. She is a much better player than a lot of these other people in the C tier. But I think her reputation is something that is going to be very hard to overcome, I believe. Tiffany from Survivor 46. Tiffany played one of the best pre-merge games of the new era, where she is able to essentially be in a 3-person alliance with Kenzie on one side, Q on the other, putting herself right in the middle of a 3-person group going into the merge. And if Q is just like half of a normal Survivor player, they have some sort of Tika 3 potential there that just never really came to fruition because of everything that went down in that early 46 merge with Q and everything. I think Tiffany's a little underrated though. I think the people on the season might underestimate her. And if she can find herself in a group early, ideally not a disaster tribe like that purple tribe on 46, if she can just get to the merge with a decent amount of people tend to love Tiffany if they've been on an island with her for any amount of time. So I don't know. I think Tiffany's one of the most likely people to win Survivor 50. I honestly kind of want to go S tier. Is Tiffany my winner pick? I'm kind of going into this blind, but I think Tiffany is S tier. I don't know if she's my winner pick. We'll see if there's anyone else that pops her, but she's got to be one of the most likely players to win. Q, like I said earlier, is kind of in that coach mold, that silly, wacky, funny, great character, but are they going to win the season? Probably not. Is anybody going to give Q $1 million? Similar to Coach, Q, I think, showed some strategic potential, where he is the one that is trying to form that alliance at the early merge on 46 with Hunter, with Tevin, with Maria, and all these people, almost similar to what happened in 48. Q was trying to do, which is like, good on Q. That's smart. Is it aggressive? For sure. Is very aggressive. But if you're somebody like Q, who's probably going to be underestimated out there, I think you have a little bit more leadway to do the super aggressive plays, just because like, who's taking Q seriously? The problem is, after making that alliance, Q immediately blows it up. They immediately vote off Tim, who was supposed to be a part of that alliance. Doing things like that not only decrease your chances of getting to the end, but I think when you're trying to plead your case to the jury, I think that sort of stuff gets looked down upon, rightfully so. Like, if you're doing things that are decreasing your chances of getting to the end, like, what are we really here for? Can Q figure all that out and like play a good game? Maybe, but I don't see Q as a very likely winner of the season. I'm putting him in D tier. Charlie was shown to play one of the best games from the new era. Charlie's basically on the right side of every vote. He is always socially insulated in a way that he was always guaranteed to be in that final 3. He's also very good at challenges, a very well-rounded player, like similar to D. But unlike D, he wasn't able to gain the respect of the jury to actually get the votes to win the game. Charlie proved to be good enough socially where everybody seemed to love Charlie on the actual island, where I could see him making the merge. And I think there's enough large strategic threats around him to where I think there's a world where Charlie doesn't get targeted super early for being such a dominant strategic player. I'm going to put him in the B tier though. There's something missing for me personally to put him any higher. Next up, Survivor 47, Genevieve. On her season, Genevieve did very good socially early, but then after blindsiding Keyshawn, she essentially goes on that whole arc of not wanting to make close bonds with people just because she didn't like that feeling of needing to vote off somebody that you're close with emotionally. Towards the end, she kind of figured that out. She kind of figured like, hey, I'm going to make these bonds and I'm going to vote you off anyways. And it's going to be hard. Like, it's not going to be easy for me. My worry for Genevieve is that I think these players that have these huge strategic plays under their belt, these huge television moments like Operation Italy, where Genevieve was a key part of, like the Keyshawn boot, which I think was hugely impactful. I think people watch 47 and are left with the feeling that Genevieve was the best player on that season. And while she wasn't able to get to the end, she's definitely somebody to look out for on a returnee season. 47 was also a very recent season. I think on a returnee season, you kind of have those recent seasons in mind more than the old ones. Potentially, I think Genevieve is a threat amongst threats. If she can manage to get herself to the end, she would have done so in this epic, crazy game. I think it's going to be hard for her to manage to get to that point. I'm going to put her in the B tier. Insane potential. Like, it wouldn't shock me if she played this great game that got her to the end and won her $1 million. I just feel like she's going to be looked at. Kamilla from 48, in a similar vein to Genevieve, obviously great strategically, wasn't able to connect socially enough with the players in the merge to where she was able to get to the end. Very similar to Genevieve. Very, very similar players. Along with Kyle, she pulled off a couple of really impressive creative moves, but I think she might struggle enough socially to where if there is like a majority group and Kamilla is on the outside of that, I think Kamilla is one of the first players to go if she can't find herself in that large group early on, just because I think people are going to be scared of her. And so I might put her as C tier. I love Kamilla. Believe me, I love Kamilla. I just don't see it for this season, unfortunately. Joe from 48, almost like the anti-Kamilla. Joe's one of the best social players of all time. The fact that he was able to have people like David and obviously Eva and Cheyenne, even Kyle, almost all of those players were under the Joe mist for so much of that season. If Joe was a player that was able to articulate the game that he played, if Joe was able to get to the end of 48 and be like, hey, I had everybody wanting to take me to the end, that was my strategy. I played the best game because everybody wanted to work with me. Everybody wanted to go to the end of the game with me. And that's why I deserve your vote. Not just because I'm a firefighter or whatever. And I think there's an argument that like, oh, Joe was always a GOAT. Joe never had a chance of winning a jury vote. That's why everybody wanted to go to the end with him. I don't know. I just feel like there was a window where Joe wins the season if he just knew the game a little better. So the question is, can Joe learn enough from his losing game and improve on it to be able to win a season like 50? I think maybe. I think Joe's a smart guy. I feel like he would have a better chance if there was more time. If you swap like 48 and 44 or something, he had a couple years to like really reflect on the game that he played and really think about what went wrong and what he could have done differently. That, you know, this honor integrity shit is just, you know, you're out there playing a game. It's a silly game. You're allowed to lie to people. It's fine. It's not morally wrong. You're out there to win $1 million for you and your family. Maybe if he had enough time to reflect, he could improve on that and he actually could be a potential winner because he's just so good socially. I feel like everybody loves Joe. On 50, he could be a really early boot, as crazy as that sounds. I think there could be enough anti-Joe sentiment just from these other players from watching the season that he could be an early boot. I'm going to put him in C tier with Kamilla. I'm not super high on Joe's winning chances. Kyle, the winner from 48. Kyle played, you know, probably the second best game of the new era, right behind D. I believe Kyle is the most likely player from 48 to win Survivor 50. As crazy as that sounds, even though he was the winner on his original season, I feel like Kamilla is going to have a similar issue that she had in 48, where I just don't know if this is the cast for her necessarily. I don't see exactly how she would fit in here, especially with the target that's on her back. Joe, I don't think has the strategic ability to win a season of this caliber. Kyle, you know, just like on 48, I think Kyle has the best of both worlds. He can pull off those big moves like he did with Kamilla. He can suck her up to a majority alliance of strong people, of which there's a lot on this season. There's Jonathan, there's Ozzy, there's Colby. You could argue Q is a little bit of that. I could see Kyle fitting in with those sorts of people. As weird as it sounds, I actually think Kyle is like an A tier for me. I think Kyle could very, very well win this season. Believe me, there's definitely a chance that 48 is fresh in their minds. And this cast is, you know, a smart group of players. They see the game Kyle played and they understand that, like, that's a dude that has to go early to mid merge or something. But I could definitely see the world where Kyle is able to overcome that and pull something crazy off and manage to win this season. And then the last two cast members are both from 49. This is just the speculated two. It hasn't been confirmed yet who actually is from 49. It would be impossible for me to put them on this tier list anyways, because obviously we haven't seen 49. Historically, a player returning from the season right before a returnee season has been shown to be a benefit. You know, think Russell from 19 goes into heroes versus villains. They don't even know who he is. They're just like, who's this this guy? Who's this wacky dude? And he's able to gain a lot of traction and find himself at the end of that game, where a lot of players on Heroes Villains have said that if they had seen Survivor 19, they wouldn't have let him get to the end of 20. But I think that this cast is smart enough and they've seen enough Survivor to where I think that they could be concerned about these players from 49. These are the wild cards. Because you haven't seen these people play, they could be players to be scared of early on. So I wouldn't be shocked if there's an anti-49 sentiment very early on, and one of these players, if not both, get the boot very, very early on. I think their performance on 50 is really just going to come down to how good of Survivor players they are at the end of the day. And because I haven't seen 49, I can't put them on the list. This is my final list. We got Tiffany as the winner. I feel like she's got a real good shot at it. Okay, there. I organized them in their tier based off of how likely I think they are to actually win. So that's my list. Making this list has actually made me realize that the men on Survivor 50 are garbage. This is a really, really bad cast of men as from a social strategy perspective. There's more men that I think have very little chance than there are men that I think could win. You heard it here first. A woman wins Survivor 50. This is my first video on the channel. If you hit that subscribe button, it really would communicate to me that I should make more videos like this. Let me know, what do you think about my list? Thank you guys for watching.